team. So
Yeah.
welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me. I don't know if that's a good thing, being a wonderful type of character, but
No. Don't hide your light under a bushel. No. We met many years ago at I think it was one of Nigel's conferences in Birmingham.
God,
And I remember talking to you, and you were talking about the strange concept of silver, buying silver and stuff like that. And you fascinated me, but I had no clue what you're on about. So it was really interesting. And your background in the RAF, of course, adds a certain spice to everything. And I've got a military background as well, so we always hit it off from that point of view. But you've gone on and done some amazing things in the trading world, but also in acquisitions. So we share a common passion in that as well. So it's brilliant to have you aboard.
But I guess I'm still very small fry in the M&A world, because I tend to play with businesses sub 2 mil turnover, whereas I know some of you guys are playing far above that. It's just that I've always been a fan of, if you are pretty good at something like your own sort of train set, just stick with it. And I guess I'm a big believer that if you have the skill set to grow a business, or if you can play around pretty confidently around sort of 100 to 900k EBITDA, then you can just rinse and repeat and just do that multiple times, and then you've got a bit of resiliency. So that's just my little playground.
No, I think that's a great comment, and for everyone listening, it's particularly helpful, I think, in terms of the concept of what you're trying to do, because I started off like you, really, at a fairly modest level. I mean, my first acquisition was 750k turnover. We followed that quite quickly with a 2 million turnover, so went to 2.7 quite quickly within 6 months.
What was the net margin on those?
Both of them were making around about 15%.
That's good.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it's good.
Quite decent. And all we really did was it was in the electrical contracting space, and we just brought order to chaos. They were electrical contractors who are really good at electrical contracting, but clueless about running a business, really. So fairly easy, quick wins to just sort out administration and finance and all that kind of stuff, really. And then I sat back and went, wow, look at that, it works. And then,
sorry, I was just going to say, with your experience as well, have you found that it's the boring companies and the boring industries that tend to be really awesome buys?
Yeah, definitely. I always talk about this, about targeting bog roll companies. And by bog roll, I mean, well, you could buy companies that actually make bog roll, but what I really mean is businesses that everybody needs to use every day. Just simple business models, easy to understand, relatively straightforward to hire people. So if you're going to grow, you're going to find the labour force without too much difficulty. And is there a great deal of complexity in the knowledge base that they need in order to do their job? And so long as the answer is no, then you're going to be able to to grow and develop those businesses. I mean, I suppose a really simple example is cleaning. Cleaning companies. Everybody needs a cleaner. Perhaps a little bit less with offices, because obviously the whole commercial office world has gone through chaos in the last year. But before that, you never even noticed the cleaner. You had no relationship, but you noticed when they weren't there, because things would be dirty and untidy. And so, that's an example of for me, as a good bog roll company. Maintenance businesses, you need a drain cleaning guy when your drains block up, and you need him as soon as they're blocked up. So it's that sort of thing for me that I like. We run scaffolding businesses, and everybody needs scaffolding. So it's a very simple business model with lots of people. I mean, it's a bit transient. We have probably we have a turnover of about 30%, a churn of scaffolders, because they'll go down the road for 50p an hour more. So they're fairly the churn rate is about 30%. And when we first started, we thought, we'll bring that down, but you just don't. It's just the industry. So once you get your head around it, then one guy leaves, another one comes in. It's just how it works, really.
And it's a lot of these industries are done so badly. Like you mentioned cleaning before. Like we've had endless issues with cleaning companies and gardening companies and stuff like that. you just need to just put some basic systems in place, and you'll stand above. Like, for example, just reply to an email or send the quote the same day. I mean, that'll put you in the top 1%.
Yeah, I mean, I always talk about MSOF, marketing, sales, operations, and finance. And if you structure your business in that way, then you start to create some order and system into what you're doing. So what's your marketing process? How do you generate leads? What's your sales process? How do you measure and control converting leads into orders? And then how do you deliver that? So have you got an operations manual? If you think about a gardening company, Siam, a bloke turns up and most companies will go, here you go, here's a shovel, go and dig holes. With no thought about how do we do things, what's the standard we work to, how do we clean, how do we talk to customers. You'll never get any of that. And in the rare examples where people actually give that some thought, then you're going to stand out head and shoulders above the rest. It really isn't rocket science, but most people don't think about that.
Yeah.
I spent some time with a guy in a mastermind group at a cleaning company down on the south coast, and I loved one of the things that they talked about is that they had a little thing where they lifted the sofas of their customers and cleaned under the sofas because nobody does it.
Yeah.
And then the bit that I loved the most was that they would then send a little text message to their customer going, "We've left a present for you under your sofa," and they would put a chocolate, a wrapped chocolate. So it meant that the customer had to lift the sofa to see that it had been cleaned and find the chocolate. I just thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, it's just lovely little bits like that. Like, I think last year we had to have a whole bunch of handymen and builders round, and like the customer service is just absolutely shocking. And I was, sort of daydreaming that if I had my own building company or handyman company, etc., like how would I stand up? And for a start, I would have a uniform, a really nice, uniform where it would stand out. I'd have something in place like, if your builder turns up, if for every minute that your builder turns up late, we'll reduce £5 from your end bill. Come with shoe covers. Like, we had to have 2 carpet cleaners in because of tradies walking up and down our cream, carpets.
Yeah.
And it's just stuff like that. And also not expecting the homeowner to make them a cup of tea. Like, I would make my builders arrive with like their own thing and offer the customer, "Hey, would you like some tea?" Just completely flip it. Just loads of little things like that really make a difference.
Yeah, no, I know. And it's that thought process, thinking, what would amazing look like? What would the best company, in this space do?
Exactly.
And then actually apply that to the people. So when we look to acquire a company, our focus is on the people. How do we make their lives better? So first business in the scaffolding space that we bought, first conversation we had with the management team is, how would this be easier for you? Because then when you buy a company, I've found that the people that are left are worried. They're not sure what's going to happen, and fear breeds concern. So you take away the fear and you make it clear. And the simple thing we said, how would everyday work look better for you? And they were kind of like, well, my computer's a bit slow. And we go, okay, so let's replace the suite of computers, because most business owners have a cost mindset, not an investment mindset. So they kind of try to do things as cheaply as possible and wait till the last possible moment. I wait till the computer breaks and then they replace it. So we just kind of upgraded the kit, and we gave everybody 2 screens, and it was like it was Christmas. And it was so cheap, but the impact on them and their mindset was massive. So when you're thinking about what you're going to do with the business after the deal completes is really, really important to success.
I think they're great points, Guy and Simon. It reminds me of a story, actually. When we bought we bought a business. We bought a vacant commercial property in '95. It was tiny, 700 square feet. And, so what's this got to do with what you're talking about? It's back to that MSOF thing, marketing. And I remember growing that business organically. And we invested £5,000 at the time with an American chap called Abraham, marketing kind of guru. Awesome he is. And he instilled some strategies, methodologies within us. And, over the, and what did that look like? Basically, we did direct mail as one of the campaigns, but direct mail a little bit of difference. So we would put like a tea bag attached to the letter. That because the average customer was a 46-year-old female shopper. So we put a tea bag in, and the headline's kind of like, put the kettle on and let me tell you a story, kind of thing. And then we followed that up with a Kit Kat. Take a break on us, put your feet up, take a break. And we did all these crazy things. Yeah. One time we even sent a banana to everybody. We've gone nuts on this promotion, you know. and you know, and it created incredible results. And most of the time, it just created a real buzz in our customer base. Yeah. And you know, I mean, a real buzz. And they would come in with a letter and didn't know what to do, half read the thing, but they were excited, and that's great.
Yeah. We talk about using direct mail to go and target companies to buy. And in the past, I used to do a lot of direct marketing, and one of the techniques is something called lumpy mail. So you send an envelope with a bit of a lump in it. You know, the basic level, that could be a pen. But like you said, maybe a Kit Kat bar or something, and then when they open it, it's kind of, you know, take a break, read this, and let's have a chat, really. I think you've done a bit of that, haven't you, Siam?
Oh, man, it's like the best form of marketing ever. So we have a corporate management training company down in Ipswich, and we target client or companies between 500 to 5,000 staff. And the decision maker is the HR director, which in these organisations, so we deal with councils, secondary schools, and NHS and banks primarily, and it's the HR director who's the decision maker. And it's impossible to get hold of them. They've got like 5 gatekeepers before you can even speak to these people. And so what we found is that lumpy mail generated probably an extra couple of £1 million in revenue within a year. So what we did, so I bought 35% of this company, and it was, I feel a bit guilty because when I looked at the company, there was like I've really only changed the top. So the marketing part of the company, and I haven't really done that much work, but it did put a couple of mil revenue on top, because they were spraying and praying. So they had 6 telesales, cold calling, and basically spraying as much mud on the wall as possible, hoping some stuck. And the conversion rate from callers to a meeting was 0.5%. And so they were just relying on volume, and I was like, I could 10x that conversion there, and that was all I needed to do. So what we did is we created the Dream 100 list, 250 and 500. So the Dream 100 list is basically, we just need to close one client on that list, and it will set us, and it will be like half a year's revenue, you know, something like that. And then our bread and butter, whatever. And so I focused on the Dream 100, and so we got the 100 best clients we could think of, and then we sent out a lumpy mail campaign. Now the key thing with the lumpy mail campaign is that you don't do it once, okay? And that's where some people, they're going down the right track, but it's like pumping water up a well and then just stopping. The water goes straight back down. And so if you do a lumpy mail campaign, you have to do it every quarter. You need to be front of mind. And so what we then did is we got rid of the cold callers. We got down to probably 2, but we turned them into warm callers and chocolate chasers. And so we had this bright blue, we can still do it, bright blue envelope. It's very bulky because we put a Kit Kat chunky in it, a tea bag, a little post-it note, just like Dan was saying. And the whole objective of that is to get a phone call. So obviously it's mini steps. A lot of people with lumpy mail they try and ask for sex straight away, but you don't. It's just the next mini step. And so what happened, and so it's interesting, a lot of the times the HR, eventually when we did get on the phone, we have this guy called Roy, who looks like Brian Blessed, and he's like, ho, 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 ho. He's like a really charismatic guy. And probably 60% of the time, the HRD never got the chocolate, this is exactly what we wanted. And so we got this little chocolate bell. And so he'd be like, what? You didn't get the chocolate? That's obscene. I'm not having this. Right, we're going to have to cancel this conversation. I've got some chocolates here. And and he'd send like 10 Kit Kat chunkies the very next day by recorded mail. And he'd be like, I'm going to call you at 12 o'clock tomorrow on the dot, and we need to get this rectified. And then guess what? One dial the next day, and the HRD go, oh, thank you, Roy, for the chocolate. And then all of a sudden, it's now a very warm call. And we always get the meeting. And so all I focused was turning that from a 0.5% conversion rate to 5%, and lumpy mail is amazing.
Well, there's some brilliant ideas there, which I hope everyone in the audience is furiously scribbling away, making notes on that sort of stuff. I did a campaign years and years ago for commercial estate agent, and they wanted to get certain site agents to this particular piece of land just to generate some interest in buying it. So they sent, I think it was about 10 people, so highly targeted, like you just said, Siam. And they sent them one left Wellington boot, a Hunter Wellington boot, and said, if you turn up on site, we'll give you the other one. And they got 100% attendance. So it's amazing what people turn up for.
No.
But, and we did another campaign using a football. So it was a recruitment agency, and they used the tagline that, you wouldn't hire a footballer unless you'd seen him. So they sent these footballs out, and then we did like a tele campaign to follow up on it, and it just cut through. Everybody got these footballs, and they were kicking them around in their offices and stuff like that. Really, so it was good fun. Andy Gwyn's on our panel. I'm guessing, Andy, you must have done in your illustrious career similar things.
Yeah. Well, you and I worked together. We didn't actually put much of that stuff in place. Whatever it was, 12 or 15 years ago. I'm just sat here because you and I first met back then when I was running my business coaching firm, and it was all about that in businesses. There's an awesome book if you've come across an Australian dentist called Paddy Lund, Pawdilund, and his first book is Building a Happiness-Centered Business, but he refers to all that as CNEs, critical non-essentials. They're not critical for the business to work, they're not essential for the business to work, but they're critical if you want to make the difference. It's the wow factor. And there's a gazillion. I remember sending out Orbit chewing gum with a direct mail letter saying, let me help you take your business into orbit. And I had a guy say, no, I've thrown it in the bin. I said, wow, why? He said, I don't trust shit that comes in the post. And I said, who have you upset in your life? And we got the call and we got the meeting, It is, you are so right that most people don't know how to run a business, and whoever, I think it was you or whoever was saying, I can just look at an area of the business and that's where I can just turn it up, and that's where you get a return. It's the exciting, good, fun stuff around the sales and marketing. I'm sort of not doing much. I got a couple of coaching clients, and I work with a Sparky. We had a load of Sparkies. And one of the things is coming up with a guarantee. So when you were talking about your cleaning businesses and all that, it's so simple. It's just thinking a bit differently. But I would read Paddy Lund's Building a Happiness-Centered Business. And also he talks about CNEs. He's got a book called CNEs, I think. We brought him into the UK to speak.
I remember you telling me about Paddy. I've got his book, and I'm so glad that you reminded me, because it is brilliant. It's really, really clever.
This guy, if you've not heard of him,
go and check him out.
Yeah, he was a dentist. He was about to commit suicide, and he decided to turn his business around. He's got a gold-plated cappuccino machine in his dental practice, and people talk about that rather than the 50 grand worth of state-of-the-art X-ray machine. And he gives you dental buttons when you walk in. They're sugar-free muffins, and he guarantees no pain. And you get a drink served on silver salver with elderberries in frozen ice. And when you sit back in the chair in the ceiling, you can choose the DVD you want to watch. He does no marketing. All his business is through referral, and you can only refer someone to him as one of his patients when he tells you you're a good enough patient. No. And I think a lot of it is about the welcome book. If you remember, Guy, you and I, when we first started, we came and did an alignment session with your team. Yeah. Hey, this is what we're going to do that's changing. And we spent a day, I think, maybe with the team, which is what I would do with every new client, which is what you said about when you buy a business. You really, absolutely, whether you bring a business coach in to do it, I would, unless you put in those things in place yourself. But day one, I want to do an alignment day with the team. This is the expectations. This is what we're doing. This is where we're at. This is why we want you. This is the vision. Because most businesses never do that anyway, and then have the complication of their concern when their boss has just sold it. So there's so much there. You're taking me back to when I was coaching business owners day in, day out, and you rekindle something. But what I do now is just help people get results with LinkedIn, and you're talking about marketing. And I've got people buying businesses saying, that's the first thing we want to put in, and just spin up some extra leads and extra sales, because it's quick and easy to do. So I think you guys, that's part of it. The excitement of buying a business is just being able to spin it up quickly and easily.
I mean, we doubled last year in the year of COVID. We doubled the turnover of one of our businesses that we bought out fully in the back end of 2019, never expecting COVID to hit. And most people go, wow, you double your turnover. But we were disappointed because we targeted to treble it. So in that context, we didn't hit the target. But, that was about re-energizing, bringing in the right management team, setting the standards and working with those guys to deliver, really. And, that's the goal, essentially. And what you'll find, I don't know if anyone on the panel or listening in the audience has ever watched Only Fools and Horses, the Triggers broom scene, which is one of my all-time favourite comedy scenes, where he talks about he wins an award from the council for having consistently sweeping the streets with a broom. But I won't spoil the punchline because it's brilliant. If anyone knows it, then you know what I'm talking about. If you don't know, go on YouTube and type in Triggers broom, because it's absolutely brilliant. But essentially, that's a good metaphor for what will generally happen after you've bought a business. In my experience, is the good people will stay and perform out of their skins, and the people that are less good will find a way to leave your business if you set the standards. I don't know if you've had that, Siam.
Yeah, spot on.
Yeah. Gavin, you've got lots of experience of this and working in businesses as well. Have you had a similar experience?
I think actually it often is easier, in my experience, to double a business in a year than people will think. And the first, some of it's the basic stuff that you and Sam were talking about a few minutes ago. I worked in and helped scale an mechanical electrical contracting business a couple of years back, and we took it from 11 million to 19 million in 18 months. And what do? I just looked at it and go, you're not showing up. The goal was to grow a £50 million business in 5 years, and said your brand, the way that you're showing up, the turnout of the guys, there's just no professionalism in this market. And having come from a professional organisation in the early part of my career, where some of those standards and ethics were sort of inbred from me from the age of 21, I just realised, and you needed to show up professionally in the marketplace. So we rebranded, we sorted out our whole pitch process, our whole sales and marketing process, rebanked the business, and the list went on. But by making those things that people who had that professional business background or indeed military background would think would be the obvious thing to do in an industry where it has not been obvious, you can really leapfrog everybody else in that competitive space because you show up so differently.
Yeah, Pimlico Plumbers is the perfect example.
Perfect, yeah.
Jeff, you must have eons of years of experience of working with a whole mixed bag of clients, and some will stand out and some will be the rest, I guess. What's your take on what we've been talking about?
It's really interesting. One of our clients, he had a very small sort of, cleaning business, and he wanted to sort of develop the business. And it was what Simon said about the chocolate was identical. What he decided to do was an insurance company. He wanted insurance work. He went in and basically gave them a bowl of sweets and walked in to fill up that bowl. He did it personally, the owner, filled up that bowl every week. So visited about 4 different insurance companies. That business from about 50,000 turnover to 2 million turnover in 2 years as a result of giving away sweets. It was like, I thought it was absolute genius. Then he sold the business and retired to Cyprus. But it was really interesting about sometimes it's just the simplest things just make that difference. I always say I've got an expression about it, what's the easiest business to run? And I always say someone else's because it's always a bit like that. But
true.
There's so many really ways of just sort of standing back and actually looking things laterally. And also, what someone mentioned about sort of unsexy businesses. I think exactly that. The ones that you make a lot of money out of, the ones you do really well out of, the ones that you're not that proud about boasting at a dinner party. They're the ones that just people they don't create a big fuss. They just do really well. So I think that's absolutely true. Like obviously scaffolding and me and accountancy. No one's going to be too proud of. I've got an accountancy practice. Everyone's going to be massively excited about that. But it's okay to be dull.
unless it's JLA, because you are a bit special. So don't be shy of that. Anyone listening to this should check out Jeff. Just on that point, actually, everyone in the room, I'd urge you to connect with the panel, so to speak, because there's, as you can probably tell, there's years and years of embedded experience and knowledge amongst these guys. So check our profiles. Make sure you follow us, connect with us, and everybody here is keen to help and guide people. So, on that note, let's just kind of open the floor up. Has anyone got any questions? Because it's a live Q&A. There's some amazing talent on this panel, far better than me, in truth. So please, there must be questions from the audience. Anyone like to put their hand up and ask some questions on any topic in terms of finding, acquiring, improving businesses, so that you can grow your wealth, really. Who'd like to go with a question?
If there's any tumbleweed, I've got some text messages of questions from people listening. So
yeah, that would be good. Let's go with a text then, Simon. No one's been brave enough to stick their hand up just yet.
I've got 3 raised hands that I can see, Guy.
Oh,
go for it. You need to make us moderators, Phil, because you open the room, so you need to make us all moderators, and then we can see.
Phil's a big boss.
Hang on
today.
Hang on then. I have the power.
You have the power, mate. Yeah, you're in the driving seat.
Right. Okay. Hang on. I'm just doing it now. I hadn't realised I was so influential.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just shows what you get when you turn up a couple of minutes early. Right.
So if you can see hands up, and then bring them up onto the panel, Phil, and we'll get stuck in.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Fine. Hang on. 1 second then. Right. I'll bring Liam up because he's top of my. Oh, hang on. I've just got to work out how to do it. Crikey, how do you do it?
If you click the little hand thing, it should.
Yeah. It should say move to speaker panel.
Okay. Right, Liam, you're up. Yeah.
Welcome, Liam.
Hi guys, thanks for inviting me up. So my question is, following on from Siam sort of talking about handymen really and poor customer service. So what I do rental to serviced accommodation in Norwich, and we have a huge need for sort of cleaners, reliable cleaners, handymen, that side of things. So I spoke to somebody recently because one of my biggest challenges at the moment is that as we grow, we're needing companies which aren't just sort of taking care of a few properties, but able to take care of more and more properties as we grow. And what I spoke to somebody a few weeks ago, gave me an idea, and they said instead of looking to to employ, we're considering bringing cleaning back in house. Employing cleaners, employing handymen, and that side of things. But instead of doing that, he said, why don't you look at companies which are around, which are available to purchase, and go down that route instead? Because the last thing I want to be doing is managing cleaners, managing handymen. I want to make sure that I'm just concentrating on plugging in properties and getting bookings. So any advice around that side of things as to where to start with that? I mean, the first thing I done was Google laundrettes for sale or, cleaning businesses for sale, and I just didn't really get anywhere with it. So just wondering where you'd start with that.
Siam, do you want to kick off on that one? So it's kind of something that you've done a fair bit of, in all honesty, and then I'll go to Phil.
Yeah, so I have to admit, I was sorry, I missed the last end of that because I was trying to I was doing the moderator stuff. So Liam, so sorry, in 5 seconds, I did hear the beginning part. What was the last 5 to 10 seconds? Sorry.
Just how would you start to, how would you go about acquiring a cleaning business or laundrette business and handyman business?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so this actually leads on from what Jeffrey said earlier, because he said it's very easy to grow someone else's business, and I completely agree. And this is why these days I nearly always buy 35% of a company, because I don't actually want the existing director or manager to disappear, because I don't want to deal with all the operational bullshit of a business. I've got my own businesses to to deal with, and so what I would highly suggest, I mean, when you do the correct drag and tag rights, etc. I've said this a few times that you can own 25% in a share and still have huge amounts of control of the company, so long as you have the correct clauses in the shareholders agreement. And I'm sure Jeffrey can elaborate more on that because that's his niche, accounting, I think. But So first of all, in terms of going to find leads like that, so let's say a cleaning company, what I would do is go to or what I did in the past is I would go to the local business meeting groups like BNI, for networking, all that sort of stuff, and literally just say, hey, I'm me, blah, 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 and I'm looking to buy or invest in a cleaning company. Do you know anyone? And if you do that for a couple of weeks, within a few months, you're going to get hounded with leads. So that's one way to do it. And another way I did it with a recruiting company is, I guess this is very similar to what a lot of people do. In fact, this is quite. Oh, there's no video here. I actually got 2 letters through the post today saying, "Hey, I want to buy your business." But like what I did with this, back in the day, I went to Experian. I don't know if they still do that because of data protection. And I bought a list of, I think, 1,000 recruiting companies. And I made a letter, and it wasn't like salesy. I was literally just lifting my skirt up and just saying, hey, this is me. I'm really looking I've got a pot of money and I want to invest or buy a recruiting company of this size, this sector, this niche, yada, yada, yada. I found your details, your home address details from a list on Experian. Then I went to Company's House, and that's that, just, in case you found it a bit weird. And what I'm doing is I'm holding a 3-course meal in London at, I think I used the hotel in Leicester Square overlooking, I think it's the Hampshire Suite or whatever. And it's on this day only, and and basically they had to then send their details to my PA to blah, blah, blah. And what happened, out of 1,000 letters, I sent out 1,000 letters, something like 40 people said, yeah, I'll come to the dinner. It's this free swanky dinner. And then 20 confirmed on the day that they still were coming. And then what happened was like 7 people actually turned up. And the format I did was Q&A over starters. And so basically it was quite funny because, hey, I'm me, blah, blah, blah. I have this recruiting company. And the next person goes, yeah, I've got exactly the same company. And the next person was, yep, I've got, and it was quite funny. And then over main course, you then do a little presentation of who you are, why you're doing this, and what you're looking for. And then over dessert, you do Q&A. And I found that format works really, really well. And if anyone is still interested for more details, you then book in a private dinner between you and that person, and also their advisors, whether it be their wife or accountant or husband or whatever. And and then you do that. So does that sort of answer, or have I gone off on one?
No, that's really good. I mean, I'm no stranger to sort of lumpy mail and that sort of things, but you're right, with an invite to say, sort of local people who have already got existing companies, that does make absolute sense. And obviously the ones which turn up are the ones which are more interested from the start. So, yeah.
Just something to add to that, Liam. I always recommend to my sort of clients, mentees, that try and target your first acquisition within an hour's drive of where you are as well. So
true.
Because you'll soon get heartily sick of travelling backwards and forwards any longer than that.
Yeah.
I can relate.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example. I had, at one point, I had 2 companies. Both of them were 65 miles from my home. One was on the Welsh borders, and one was across in Rotherham. So although on the map they were the same distance, it took me twice as long to get to Rotherham because I had to drive over the Pennines. And on one memorable week, I picked up 6 points on my licence going through a new speed trap that they'd introduced backwards and forwards, which pissed me off as well. And I actually sold the business in Rotherham, even though it was a better business, because I literally got fed up driving across the Pennines. So just practical consideration like that, really, to bear in mind as well. The other thing I would just chuck in, there is a website which is owned by a corporate finance team rather than one of the brokers, called dealopportunities.co.uk. Go and have a look at that. You can filter companies for sale. They are on the market, so it comes with a health warning. On the other hand, one of the nice things about that website is you can filter by the oldest. In other words, the companies that have been on the market the longest, who are probably the most brassed off that they haven't been able to sell. So use that as a filter, and it's across the UK in all kinds of different sectors as well. So you can regionalize and you can sectorize, and crucially choose by the oldest that have been on the market. So that's a good place to go and have a look as well.
Yeah, and also I think it's important to know that the M&A is not necessarily a quick thing, Liam. Like, sometimes it will take a while to spool things up. So, like, you could strike it lucky if you do like a lumpy mail, or and you could be very lucky, and then you start having meetings within weeks, etc. But what I found that like your deal flow is so important, and it takes a while, and a matured lead is a better lead. So there's so many times where I'd have meetings that, hey, I'd like to get involved with your business, blah, blah, blah. And like nearly all the times, like, no, I've got a profitable business here, why would I sell? Because I was always targeting profitable businesses. But then it's important to keep in touch with them at least once a quarter. So every quarter, just send a text message and say, hey, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. And lo and behold, 12 to 18 months later, most people will come back to you and say, hey, do you want to have a chat about, coming on board now? So matured leads are always the best, but you just got to build up that pipeline.
We always used to talk about in direct marketing, ready, willing, and able. So to get a sale or a transaction, you needed to have that communication at a point where the other side was ready, willing, and able. And sometimes you wouldn't get the transaction because they were ready and willing but not able, or they were ready and able but not willing. And it's just that confluence of timing, really. So as Siam said, it's just continuous communication, really, until you hit them in the sweet spot. And we've seen a big uptick in the last 2 quarters of business owners basically kind of going, do you know what, I've throw the towel in, I've had enough. COVID and all the complexities and all the doubt and confusion, I'm just accelerating the speed at which I think I'll exit my business. So this year, 2021, I do believe, from all the evidence that we've seen, is going to be a bumper year for those of you that are serious about looking to acquire and grow through acquisition. And now's the time to jump on that bus without a shadow of a doubt. Phil, I mean, you're really active in that. I'll come back to you down in a sec, but what's your experience, mate? Because you're heavily into that at the moment.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of what Siam said. It's great that we've got Siam on the panel because you have got a different approach to this than the rest of us, actually. But in terms of trying to identify potential acquisitions, I would use as many routes as possible. And for me, in terms of what I've done, there's been 3 main ones. One is direct mail, which obviously we spent a bit of time talking about, because that does allow you to target who it's going to. Second, good old-fashioned networking. If you know lawyers, if you know accountants, if you know bankers, if you know financial advisors, they will all have clients and customers in a variety of industries, some of whom will be in the industry you're interested in. So it's well worth talking to them and doing that. And then the third way is, as Guy alluded to, websites like Deal Opportunities, and then there's another one which is called Business Sale Report. And both of those have got a lot of businesses that are on the market. And what that does is gives you a real idea of what's out there. It just gives you a sense of what is out there right now. They're not always the easiest ones to bring home because they've got brokers or middlemen involved, but it's great just to look at a lot of businesses and then pick out the ones that really interest you.
Yeah, no, perfect. Yeah. Thank you. And Dan, you were gonna come in on a point there.
Just really to back you up on, in terms of opportunity, this is it. This is as good as it's going to get, guys. Everybody listening here, it's time to kind of fill your bucket, start your sourcing machine, because this decade will see the greatest wealth transfer that's ever been. 27 trillion will transfer from baby boomers to the next 2 generations. That's an incredible amount. Now, meanwhile, there's a lot of different things. I don't want to go into them, but just very quickly, baby boomers is huge, but there's also another thing that's happening right now. Funds, because of the Black Swan event, are all of a sudden deciding their core assets that they've bought and held for the last 20 years are all of a sudden non-core assets. Now, just land securities. This more on property, but land securities alone have announced they're putting $5 billion on the market over the next 4 years. That's just one fund. This is the decade that you'll look back either with and celebrate or with regret. So, get your source machines ready. Build your tribe, build your movement, build your community to fund things, and start that sourcing machine.
Yeah. And make friends with lots of accountants. Honestly, I've had so many leads, or not so. I've had lots of leads from accountants who are friends, because obviously they know what's going on in their client book. So just simple introductions.
Accountants are friendly people, aren't they, Jeff?
Of course we are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I hope so. Anyway.
Or even better, buy into an accounting firm. Then you got your lead flow.
Yeah, absolutely. Sort the best from the worst.
Yeah. There's always a number.
That's a great point, actually, Siam. Because what Siam's talking about are lead indicators. When a lead indicator when somebody's in trouble, we're going to speak to their accountant. Going to speak to the last one is the banker, valuation experts. You got to surround yourself and create relationships with lead indicators instead of lag indicators. Lag indicators, it's on the market. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Andy, you were going to come in, I think, mate.
Yeah, I'm multitasking that gets us so much good stuff. I'm not sure anyone's mentioned LinkedIn, have they?
Not yet. Somebody said specialist field, mate.
Thank you. Because all the marketing strategies you mentioned are sound, and I think we probably know you've got to have multiple marketing strategies in place consistently. Someone said, "Yeah, you've just got to keep at it." It's the old warm leads. I've just had a lady buy from me that's been on my database 17 years, and we haven't physically, personally communicated for probably when I bumped into her 8 years ago, but she's been on my mailing list. LinkedIn's awesome. You talk about networking, it's all great. It's time heavy. I'd be looking at getting creative. I'm not so sure. The cleaning companies definitely. When somebody mentioned laundrettes, you can argue how many people will be easily found as laundrette owners on LinkedIn. But there's a gazillion groups, and I have some amazing, unique automation, and I can go connect with group members. I can also scrape other people's contacts and then message them in LinkedIn. So who else might be dealing with laundrette owners? But certainly your B2B and professional businesses, they're abundant there. And what you can now do is sending out video. You could tie that in with inviting people to the webinar. We talked about seminars and dining them. I'd just be integrating LinkedIn. I've got clients where we're just connecting and messaging people every day for them saying, are you interested in selling? A bit more creative, a bit more engaging, a lot more engaging than that. But in essence, that's what you're doing. And you can automate and you can be getting massive volume, like sending out a message to 100 of your connections a day, connecting with 50 people a day. It's there to be had. I'm just going to go on mute because I'm in Spain and I've got the delivery at the door.
No worries, Andy. Thank you for that. Kevin, you popped up onto the floor, so I'm guessing you got a question, mate. Fire away.
Hi, Guy. Yes, just in relation to businesses, say for example in construction, whereby the company is more supply and fit or supply and install rather than actually manufacturing, and there's no real assets there. Obviously, they've got vehicles and things like that, but how would you look at valuing those and structuring a deal, whereby, technically the customer flow, there is a brand there, long established history, but, if you're not manufacturing the product and, there's less IP or less tangible assets. So just wondering multiples in those type of companies and in the construction industry, and how you think would be best to structure, the purchase.
I think there's two components to that. First is always understanding the vendor and their motivations. Trying to convince a vendor who's not sure whether he wants to sell is an uphill battle. So the trick is always to try to build relationships with people who have a motivation for any variety of reasons. We're all humans at the end of the day. So, but in terms of the base numbers and the metrics, what I've always worked on is the higher the profitability of the business, the higher the multiple. So as a real basic rule of thumb, I'll start at maybe 2 times if it's down in single digits. And then if we're kind of talking 10 to 15%, maybe 3 or 4 times multiple, and so on. So just to give you a flavour, really. But like everything, every deal is bespoke. So you've got to look at the circumstances and you've got to look at the opportunities. And I really like, Siam's approach is sort of taking a fraction of the deal, where he can bring a lot of value and increase the value of the business. So his 35% starts at, say, 50 quid. And by the time he's finished doing his, magic dust, that's extended to maybe, 150 quid. And Gavin's talked about similar things as well. So keep an open mind around deal structure. Liam's question before, which I meant to mention, is also think about your integration opportunities. So start with a business and then think about what other companies, are in the same space but complementary. So when I started I was in marketing services, and we were running a creative DM agency and a data services business. But we were spending a lot of money with printers and mailing houses, and I went, we could really expand if we bought those supply chain companies, because we're essentially sort of selling to the same end user ultimately, but they're all different. So I thought about that was the reason I got into buying companies, is it was a faster way to grow. So think about it in those terms. Think about those sort of complementary elements. But in simple terms, to answer your question, as I say, I think it's about what's the percentage margin. And people often say, how do you get there? Well, it's dead simple. If a business makes 250 grand a year and it's going to carry on doing that, and they want 10 million quid, divide 10 million by 250 and you get the number of years it's going to take before it's all yours. And you wouldn't wait that long. And I've eyeballed vendors and said, would you wait 7 years to get your money back? And they kind of sheepishly look at you and go, no, not really. So I go, okay, so what's it worth? And then you find that there's a lower figure. So in many respects, it's not rocket science. It literally is as simple as that, as a start point, really. Does that help?
Yeah. Yes. Thanks. Yeah, that definitely does. And in relation to sort of the initial and deferred consideration, when there isn't things like assets to assist with it, and there is the situation whereby you could pay this multiple, but half your workforce could leave next month or next year, or the customer flow might not be there. Are you more cautious on how you spread that deferred consideration? Or
I mean, we have a very clear rule, and we put it in an FAQ document, and we send it to vendors and advisors, that we're really, really upfront about this is what we will do and this is what we won't do. And it goes into detail around what percentages, what kind of security we're prepared to offer, all that kind of stuff. So we're completely open book right from the get-go. This is us. This is what we do. If that's not for you, brilliant. Off you pop, no problem, because there's loads and loads of opportunities out there. That's the start point, really. So, for example, I always think that a sweet spot that most vendors would want is probably 50% of whatever the enterprise value is. That feels fair and reasonable as a target, and definitely no more than 65% on the day. That's our metric. So between 50 and 65 is what we would expect and aim for. And then deferred consideration is really about cash flow. So what does your cash flow look like, and how long is it realistically going to take to generate the net profits that you need to pay off the balance? And then again, it's about motivation. So some people would say, well, I don't want to hang around, wait longer than 3 years, for argument's sake. And then you've got to figure out whether that's doable. So a good cash flow model is really critical. Someone like Jeff could help you with that for sure, if it's not something that you've got in your bag. But having a simple model or a complex model, but start with the basics really, and understand what the numbers look like, and then it comes back always to how motivated is that vendor to want to dance with you, really.
Yeah. Do you mind if I share my NORA model, Guy?
Yeah, mate, please do.
Because I think it could help Kevin. Sorry, I've got a frog in my throat. I do M&A slightly different, because when you sort of teach yourself on Google, there's you can buy a business up front, or you can do an earn-in of some sort, or deferred payments. And the thing is, when I started M&A, I was looking for distressed businesses, and as a result, I had endless amounts of pain. Like, a distressed business is distressed for a very good reason. It's screwed, or it's got skeletons, or the business owner's bad, blah, blah, blah. And so I sort of left a trail of destruction on company's house of me buying a distressed business and then didn't work and then having to wind it up, all that sort of stuff. And so I created what I call the NORA, the no risk acquisition. Now, I hate the term no risk, but it generally is no risk, and you'll see in a sec. So basically, the way I do it, I buy businesses via call options. And so what happens is, let's say there's company X. I'll go into the business and say, hey, you're doing, I don't know, easy numbers. Let's say you're doing 10 grand a month profit at the moment. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to buy a £1 call option to buy 35% of your company for whatever strike price. So let's for example say 35% of his business. What is that? Let's say 35% of the business is worth 50 grand. Okay, so what this means is that over the next 2 years, I have the option to buy 35% of that company for 50 grand. Okay. And so it's then in my interest that I get on board, implement my systems, etc., and grow that business to the point where 35% of the business is worth more than 50 grand. But it's not the end there. So there's still risk there. So what happens is I've got a marketing company with an in-house graphic designer, web dev, systems architect, digi-marketer, all that sort of stuff. And if someone were to hire or employ all of those people, I mean, that's a payroll of 15 grand plus. And so what I say is, look, I'm going to parachute my marketing company on board, and you can have full unrestricted access to everyone on my team for 3 grand plus VAT per month. And so they're getting really good deals. So what happens is this company X will then pay me a retainer for 2 years, 3 grand a month plus VAT. So that's 72 grand. And then in 2 years' time, if I've done what I said I was going to do, and the company's now worth a lot more, I then simply pay the 50 grand to then exercise the call option to get that 35%. But what's actually happened is that that 50 grand I'm paying, I'm just giving it back to them because I made 72 grand from that retainer. Does that make sense? So
that is a stroke of genius.
Yeah. So what happens is, I don't do any due diligence now, because I used to get tied up with DD. Like, you spend months and then going back and forth, and it's like, oh my god, it's like trying to get married to someone, but then interrogating them for 2 months. Or so what happens is I just get into bed straight away with them, and within a couple of months you'll soon see whether it's going to work or not. You'll know whether you like the existing director or not. If there are any skeletons in the closet, you will find them like within 3 months. And if you don't like each other and it's not going to work, you simply rip up the contract and walk away. And what's it cost me? It's cost me £1 for the call option. It's cost me some time in implementing my systems and getting to know the business. But that time is offset by the 3 grand a month that they're paying. So that's sort of no risk. Now, the worst thing that could happen in that NORA, the worst, because I also put a doubling clause in place. So I say I can only exercise the option if I've doubled the value of the business. So I can only, in this example, I can only exercise my call option if I take the business from 10 grand a month profit to 20 grand a month profit. So worst case scenario for me is that within 2 years, or by the end of 2 years, the profit's only, 19 grand a month profit. And then I can't exercise the call option. But over that time, hopefully, there's goodwill and so. But that's just one very vanilla way of doing it, and you can do all sorts of different clauses. So I don't know what the equivalent of the equivalence is in the construction world. I guess if you had an architect, that's what gives all the deal flow to builders. You could sort of do something like that, but. I mean, does that help, Kevin, or have I just confused everyone?
No, your points are fantastic and very valid, because actually part of that, my acquisition strategy is I'm in the middle of trying to acquire a digital marketing agency, just for that very much reason, that I believe that the digital marketing agency can feed into all of those businesses. But I didn't think of the angle
that you have now suggested. So those points and Guy's points before have been excellent. So thank you very much. Just something to add. I'll come back to you, Gavin, in a second. Just to add into that, Kevin, as Siam's describing his strategy, think about the other components that could work. So in construction, often a massive weakness is QSing. Subcontractors constantly get beaten up by the main contractors, for lack of QSing skills and contractual awareness. So I would urge you to think about that as a potential angle. That alone could make a massive difference, both to the margin performance and just the quality of the output of the subcontractor working with a main contractor in that environment, really. So maybe you don't even need marketing; you just need more commercial nous, particularly in construction, really. So I'd chuck that in for a thought process for you as well. Great point. Thank you very much. No problem. Or indeed engage with someone like Jeff and just get your financial systems. There's just always go back to MSOF. Think about where's the point of pain. Is it marketing? Is it sales? Is it ops? Is it finance? What are the things that would make that business fly without you having to buy the whole thing? And I think the call option's a great thing. We talked about that a while ago, Simon. I'd forgotten about it, so I'm really grateful that you brought that up on the platform today. I think it's a great strategy. I really do.
I'm just
Gavin,
really
you were going to
bored
say something,
of
I think.
I'm just really bored of ploughing money into a business and then it just not working. Like I bought a business 1 week before the March lockdown. Worst acquisition ever. But yeah,
I know. Who knew? Go on, Gavin.
Stroke of genius, that call option. So I think the key to that strategy is to have a services company that you can offer in, that you can get your monetization. Otherwise, you're doing the work in that company. If you don't have an accounting practice, you don't have a digital marketing or a QS or any other kind of needed service for that business, then you're putting sweat equity in and you may or may not get anything back from a cash flow point of view. So I think the key to that strategy evidently is having a services related company to do it. But other than that, that's just bloody genius. But my next point though is how not all of your business owners are going to be sophisticated about the concept of call options. Do you find it easier to explain to those that are uninitiated with such instruments, or not, or is it quite? Do you get some people who go straight to the top of the head and you lose them when you sort of put it forward to them?
It's a great question. So the key thing here is that you don't even say the words call option. So you explain it like. I don't mean this in a bad way, but I try and explain stuff like that as though they were my 75-year-old dad, and I just say, wouldn't it be good if I jumped on board the business for free, and I'll learn everything about the business. I'll give you all my systems, my techniques, my methods, how I think, and we can brainstorm everything, and I can then sort of jump on board over the next 2 years, and if I like it, I can, have an option, or I don't say the word, we can figure out. So you have to do the baby steps. So you sort of explain one step first. Like, would it be helpful if I came on board for a couple of years and and gave you all the systems, etc.? Yes, okay. And then you keep doing those little baby steps, and then it'll eventually get to the point of, well, how does this work? And then I go, okay, so this is the call option. And so with the call option, I tend to have about 4 or 5 different sort of clauses, and then you just have to explain in simple 5-year-old English every single bit. And then what I always do, so I learnt this from someone else, as in the shit list and the fix list, a guy called Jeremy. So what I do, once we've all agreed that they like this NORA idea, I get a notepad. So there's preferably A4, so on left page, right page, and on the left page I put shit list, and on the right page I put fix list. And so there's loads of questions. So on the left hand side, I write my name. I go, right, I'm gonna be completely brutally honest with you, and I'm gonna share every single worry that I have. I'm worried that you're hiding skeletons in the closet. I'm concerned that your figures are not correct. I'm concerned that blah, blah, blah. And I literally lay it out. And then I draw a big line under that. And I go, right, now it's your turn. Be brutally honest. What are your fears? And they list all the fears. So on the left-hand page, you've got a whole page of fear. And then on the right-hand page, which is what I call the fix list, I then go, okay, so here's fear number 1. I'm scared that you're hiding skeletons in the closet. So, and then on the fixed list, you just write out in simple English mitigations to that. So if my fear is I'm worried that your numbers are incorrect, and then the fix would be I need full access to the last 12 months of bank statements, because you can find everything within bank statements, whereas accounting reports you can massage. And then before you know it, you have a whole list of shit and a whole list of fix, and that is the bare bones of the like heads of terms. And so when that person goes home to speak to their wife, husband, accountant, lawyer, and go, oh, this person came up with a really crazy idea of doing this call option thing, obviously they're not going to be able to explain it like you did over the period of an hour and a half. And so, and their significant others go, well, yeah, well, there's going to be some sort of catch, blah, 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 that he's going to do this and screw you over. Oh, it's funny you said that. I actually said that. And this is the fix that we have for it. And so they just present the shit list and fix list. And then that is when you have another conversation with their advisors.
Some really smart advice there. Thank you, Siam. I knew you had huge amounts of value, so I hope everyone in the audience is furiously writing notes, because there's some great stuff in there. I'm conscious that the clock is, as always, ticking on this. It's a great topic, and we've got some people who are probably keen to ask questions. So let's come to, I think, Kent, you were next.
Hi, guys. So what it is we've kind of been offered a hotel, and obviously they're shut at the moment, but what's everyone's kind of thoughts? We'd probably get it for a good price, and I've noticed that some people's buying companies and then taking like the bounce back loan or the CBILS loan once they own them. Kind of thought that you had to be in the company for a certain amount of time before you could do that. So I wondered how that strategy was working.
It's the business that's getting the CBIL, not the individual.
Yeah, but if you buy it in a new company, then obviously it's a new company. That make a difference?
It depends how you buy it, Kent. So as Siam said, if you buy the business that has the asset, i.e. the hotel, so the hotel trades as a company, then that company should be able to apply for whatever government funding is available. Alternatively, there's nothing to stop you having an open conversation with the seller and start that process as part of the completion component. But to answer your opening point, you just need to take a view really when you think the hospitality sector is going to come back to life. I suspect, and Dan's an expert in this area, if you sit on your hands a bit longer, there's going to be a huge amount of distressed property available. So yeah, I think that's something to bear in mind. I don't know if you've got a view on that, Dan. It's kind of commercial property and how that's going to play out.
Yeah, I know Ken quite well, obviously, and welcome in, buddy. But yeah, the stress is all around, and it's getting obviously accelerating. Banks, when we come out of COVID, probably Q3, you'll see the banks really stepping in, forcing revaluations and then covenant breaches, and then the end result of that is, they go in the market, and that means the market's going to be inundated. But not only that, obviously I've alluded to before, funds are putting an incredible amount of stock onto the market as well. But for me, if you're buying an asset like that, then you got to think about, everything business, commercial is all based on one fundamental, is cash flow. And right now there's none. So how do you withstand to get through to the other side, number one? And then how do you then, obviously you'll have a burn rate to then get up to break even and then obviously grow through there. So you want to mitigate any issues, any losses, any potential damage to you financially, reputationally, and how you do that is simple as Guy said. You want to be buying the company in this one. And if you've got a holding company that buys the SPV company that's already in existence, then you could potentially apply for CBILS. Whether you get it or not, it depends on if it's a bankable proposition. Yeah. And there's certain conditions that have to be met for CBILS, but it's an incredible space right now. The window closes 31st of March unless it's extended, which it probably might, but if it does get extended, the conditionality will probably change. So right now you've kind of got 7 weeks left to do that kind of thing. But for me, it's cash flow is the foundation of everything. And then mitigation, asset protection, mitigation, so that it doesn't come back to yourself. Now, if that's possible or not in a big property play like that, who knows? So how could it be possible? You could potentially take a lease option, and then call that option at any point in time over the foreseeable future. Now, if it's in distress, that won't work, because there'll be no doubt guaranteed some senior lender in there. So if there's no debt, happy days. If there is debt, then you got to work with a lender, and the people that know when assets like that are going to come onto the market in a distressed position are who are the lead indicators in that kind of environment, and it's commercial property valuation agents. They are instructed 3-6 months before any issues happen. So if it's in your area, create relationships with the 3 agents in your area, and you'll take them out to dinner like Sam said, invite them all for a fancy 3-course dinner, create a relationship, add some value to them, and you'll be the lead guy quite quickly in your area.
One of the obviously bonuses, I don't think there's any capital allowance has been claimed on the building either, and I was on another clubhouse room, funny enough, and the guy was talking about obviously converting the rooms to SA units and being able to claim the capital allowances twice, or a second kind of bite of that. I'm not sure if you guys know anything about that.
Well, capital allowance is a very specialist niche area, and a great area as well. Tax breaks for investing in commercial property. Now, if they've been claimed or not, it's really easy to find out, but use a specialist, don't use your accountant. This is a specialist field, and I'll give you a number if you haven't got one already.
No, I've got that number from you, actually, Dan.
All right, cool. So you would speak to him, and he would do a desktop analysis after they've been claimed or not. Now, if they haven't been claimed, happy days, but you can't claim it twice. Once they've been claimed, that's them recorded down as claimed. There are other things called enhanced capital allowances that you can actually get a tax break of 150% of the spend, the investment, over and above what's potentially available in the existing property, obviously. But again, specialist kind of advice is needed here. But fundamentally, bringing it back, cash flow, Ken. How do you get to cash flow? That's the critical thing. Because I've had properties I bought for £1, but unless there's a direct route to cash flow and forced capital appreciation, why bother? Because there's opportunity costs. You could be on something else.
I think it was trading quite profitably before it obviously locked down. It's just obviously when that ends.
Yeah, again, just picking up on the whole broader topic of M&A is sort of when you're thinking about assets to buy, whether that's an operating business, property-related business. I always come back to the opening conversation around bog roll businesses. What are you trying to achieve, really? And if you can think about assets that will continue to generate revenue, much the same as Siam's talked about, my advice is, I'm not an expert in property anyway, but my advice in anything to do with the hospitality sector, quite honestly, because of the huge amount of uncertainty created by government strategy, if there is a strategy, I honestly think you just got to kind of sit and wait to see what emerges, really. And there may be some winners that people are piling early into that sector, but I'm naturally more cautious around things like that. I just want to be able to see future revenue, predictable revenue, and therefore cash flow. Jeff, have you got any thoughts around that?
Yes, I have. I think there will be in a couple of years' time people who have made an enormous amount of money at this time, and they will be talking and giving great seminars about how fantastic they were. But I think you're right. It's just a bit of luck. They may have guessed right, they may have guessed wrong, and if they've guessed right, they're going to come off. The hotel thing is definitely. I mean, I think if you're going to be very lucky to be able to fund the whole thing, that acquisition without any money in at all. I would have thought I would be surprised even whatever low values, because you're still going to get a bank in there that's going to have to value that asset, and they're not going to value it high, and that's not going to give somebody the number they want, but because they can probably just do that themselves. But it doesn't. Yes, it's only worth trying, but I would be surprised if that comes off.
Yeah, I think so. Is that okay, Ken?
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks, guys.
All right, no worries. Nick, let's come to you.
Yeah, hi, thanks for inviting me up onto the panel. And Andy, I know through some discussions about property, I've got a situation which possibly quite a lot of people can relate to. I've had senior procurement supply chain kind of positions with blue chip and renewable energy companies, but I've got a bit cheesed off working for other people, some of the crap systems, for want of a better expression, that they have, and some of the office politics, and want to do my own thing, want to buy a business.
Yeah.
So I've got a couple of questions. The first is whether you need to have an MBA or should study something like that in order to run a business. And the other thing is I've actually been reading a very good book, which I'd recommend, on the Harvard Business Review Guide to Buying a Small Business, which has been quite instrumental in trying to identify a target business. I'd come across courses by people like Carl Allen, sort of buy a business in 99 days, but give me a load of cash in the process. And I'd come up with wanting to own, rather than a bog roll business, a film production business, and was looking at one in Florida. I wonder if you've got any thoughts about, because you've got to get into visas and funding, and trying as a non-green card holder, I just wanted a complete change. So I wondered if you've got any thoughts about whether I'm being too ambitious, whether I should keep it much more local to the UK. And it'd be interesting to see what you think.
That's a really, really good question. And as luck would have it, I think we've got Carl's colleague Adam waiting patiently to speak. So do you know what? I'm going to come to Adam and welcome you aboard. And because of your expertise in the States, that might be something you can help Nick with, really.
Yeah, thanks, Guy. I appreciate it. And ironically enough, Carl Allen is my co-founder and business partner of a few things. So Nick, glad you found him in some ways. I would say, is it too ambitious? It's hard to say without obviously knowing more information about your objectives. Can someone in the UK be an owner of a US business? Absolutely. It's almost always made easier if you've got a US-based partner. This is going to help primarily on the banking side of things, on the relationship side of things, and stuff like that. If it's your first deal, which it sounds like it might be, we typically always say stay in your lane and stay somewhat close geographically to where you are. And a lot of that comes from, as you're overcoming those initial hurdles on a first deal, right? Everyone here who's done 80+% of your knowledge came from that first deal you ever did, where you stubbed your toe 75 times along the way. And it's always better to stub your toe on something that you're far more familiar with, and you've got the access proximity-wise to things you've got familiarity with. So the answer is it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult if you jump over to the States for your first deal, unless you've got a great partner. Otherwise, I would certainly recommend stay local. But the options are there.
Thanks, Adam. I think that's really good feedback. I just
Totally
a thought
agree.
crossed my mind, Nick, when you were asking the question and then listening to what Adam said. My thought was not so much about are you being ambitious, but why you're doing it. I always try and encourage people to start with the why, and then also think about what's my end game, what's the purpose of this, because I meet so many business owners who they essentially identify themselves as what they do in their business, and they have no thought to the exit until the day turns up where they need to have that thought process, really. So should you buy something in Florida? Well, it's a really nice place to live with the weather and all the rest of it, so there might be a compelling reason to do that. You might be in a financially sound position where you can afford to go and do that, in which case that's a lifestyle choice, and that's, again, totally appropriate. Then the question is, well, why would you buy that? So if you've got a passion for the niche, for what that business does, and you feel that you can add value to it, then 100% you should give it a go, because when you engage in conversation, a bit like Siam does, with sellers, you're going to find it a lot easier to have those conversations and build.
I think we lost you there, Guy.
Can you still hear me okay? Yeah, sorry, it bounced from my headphones. So So those are the reasons that I would urge you to think about, rather than is it too ambitious? I love ambition, so don't feel that you shouldn't be ambitious, but just think through those reasons rather than the way you phrase the question, if that helps, Nick.
Yeah, I certainly think so. What about the other part, which was to do with whether you should study an MBA or take some education in properly running a business?
Don't do it.
No, never worth it.
No. Please take. I have a company that teaches MBA. So one of my businesses is a corporate management training company, and we are Ofsted regulated. We're ESFA funded. We teach level 3, 5, 7 management and also MBAs. So, like, I do have a fair bit of knowledge in the MBA world, and I'm telling you now, it's the single product I hate in that business. Do not do it. It's an utter waste of your time and money. Utter waste. And what you'll see with the stats of those that with MBAs tend to end up. So a huge percentage of MBA holders never actually end up getting into business, and those that do end up getting into business, as in small business startups, that's the key here. They end up doing terribly because MBAs are really geared towards enterprise. So MBA holders are very, very good at getting like management and like high-level management roles in bigger businesses, where they will need like really complex spreadsheets and stuff like that. But if you're like a one-man band getting into business or an SME and you're going to have less than 20 staff, an MBA is a waste of your time, mate. But that's just my opinion, of course, and I'm sure there are others here that says MBAs are definitely worth it. So
I just want to add a practical thought around that. I'll come back to you in a sec, Andy. What I would do in your situation is I would surround myself with brilliant advice, and I'm not promoting any one person here, but someone like Jeff, because your foundation in terms of the finances and how to structure your finances is crucial. So teaming up with someone like Jeff will help you massively, or teaming up with someone like Andy, Gavin, those guys who really get business from a coalface perspective will help you a lot, and getting clear about what you want to do. And I agree with Siam that an MBA is almost like a kind of, I don't know, a theoretical, fluffy, in-depth concept that isn't about the real world, that you're not going to step into that really. So that's my 2 pence. But go on, Andy, you've obviously got a view on this as well.
Yeah, when I was employed in management, I did year 1, so the guys just talked about the different levels. But I bought into Action Coach, which is a global business coaching franchise, coaching the SME business owner how to grow businesses. And I had a very close friend who was the same. Me and him worked together, and he had an MBA. And one of the things I learned when I was studying the first year towards an MBA was I'd seen the new CEO's vacancy for Disneyland Paris, and the prerequisite was you must have an MBA. And so it is very geared towards corporate.
Yeah.
And my close friend said he learned more about growing privately owned businesses, working with Action Coach, learning the stuff that's been talked about on this call. Guys called it coalface and grassroots stuff. He said, I've learned more about growing businesses in just a year of studying this stuff than I learned on an MBA. My MBA hasn't served me to help me grow businesses, which is what some of the other 2 guys have said. So whether you take on a business coach or whether you hook up with someone who can teach you the stuff, and there's loads of resource, I'm saying what the others are saying. I guess I'd reinforce it. I'm not dissing MBAs, but if you're going to buy an SME business and run a privately owned business, you need to learn other stuff. I
think an MBA is for a corporate career.
Correct.
Full stop.
There you go. Yeah.
That's really interesting, because I think Guy or Simon, I think one of you asked what were my reasons and what was my rationale. And as Andy will know, I've knocked around the property scene for a while, and what I've wanted to do is buy a business to then fund properties where you will get passive income from. But I've always got to be busy, but I don't necessarily want to be busy running a rent-to-rent business or doing something like that. So that's kind of the background of my rationale.
I think that's absolutely spot on. And the guy that founded Action Coach International, Brad Sugars, talks exactly about that. Make your money in business and invest it in real estate.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Adam, I know you had your hand up for something, so as you kindly assisted Nick there, what was your question or observation?
Yeah, less a question, more just some perspective from this side of the pond. Carl and I are certainly doing deals in both the UK and the US and elsewhere, and I think this goes back to Ken's question about the hotel and Nick, your question about possibly doing a deal in Florida. And the thought is this: the juice has to be worth the squeeze. And what I mean is, in the hotel, is the amount of energy and effort you're going to put in identifying whether the cash flows are going to come around and what the uncertainty may or may not be. Are you better off not finding another opportunity that can make money now and still provide the same level of headaches in terms of doing a deal? If you don't have, say, the infrastructure behind you that, say, Siam has, where you're jumping in and doing those quote-unquote options or strategies there, you want to maximize your opportunity. Go to something that's got a little bit more surety, especially if you're talking about your first opportunity, and just get one under the belt. Again, 80+% of this is stubbing your toe on the first deal, and once you move past that, you can think a little bit bigger and more aggressively. And that's not to stifle ambition, just have some level of pragmatic enthusiasm for the kind of deals you're looking to do and what you want to accomplish. So for anyone who hasn't bought a company, just get one under the belt first. That's a little bit less on the upside and more on the surety. And then you'll get a lot of those mistakes out of the way. And then from there, you can start thinking bigger and better.
I think that's a really useful point. Thanks, Adam. And I would just add something to that. What I've found as well is everyone I've coached, once they've done their first deal, it transforms the experience because they're no longer a wannabe. They're a deal maker. They've done a deal. It's like a magic kind of transformation. Their perception with funders, with sellers is that, oh, you've done a deal, right? Okay. It does have that transformative effect. So, but even if it's a smaller deal, then it still has the same impact, really. So I'd agree with what Adam's saying, but that's one of the reasons why it just makes a big difference to what you do afterwards, really. So we've got Andrew is on jumped up for a question. What's your question, Andrew? Andrew Beer? You still there? Or has Andrew gone off to get a beer? No pun intended. Well, it was a pun intended, so apologies. No offence intended.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, you're there.
Sorry, I had a problem with the microphone, I do apologise.
Right.
Hi. Good afternoon. Thanks for a great listen. I'm fairly early on my business buying journey. I'm talking with my partner to a company at the moment. They've got a slightly uneven earnings track record. Mm-hmm. So what we've done, we've sort of taken an average of the last 4 years, which is a fairly reasonable number. We think works out okay for them, giving them an indicative offer. And okay. I think they want a bit more. Don't know exactly what yet, but are we on the right lines in your opinion, or is there another way to think about structuring that?
Who wants to pick that one up? Dan, that one for you? Fancy jumping in on that?
That could be. Apologies, I was just responding to something. Can you just in 5 seconds just my question is, and apologies for that.
Sorry, Dan. Do you want to repeat the question, Andrew?
Sure, I'll try to make it a little shorter. Talking with a company that has a slightly uneven earnings record. We've given them a sort of a four-year average and made them an offer based on that. We've actually offered them 4 times. Based on an average of the last 4 years. I think they're going to want a little bit more. Don't exactly what yet because they haven't told us, but are we on the right track, or is there another way of potentially looking at it and structuring it?
Yeah, there's always a myriad ways to structure things. What you're really got to start with is, for me, it's all about human connections, being humble, human, and listening twice as much as you talk, at least. And when doing that, you move the discussion, the conversation away from money and multiples. Everybody gets kind of lost in money and multiples, where there are usually 80% of buyers the reasons for selling, or vendors selling, is psychology, which is hard to believe, hard to get your head around. But unless you've done a number of deals, you won't understand that. So for me, it's always about finding out the root issues. What is it they're trying to achieve, and then mold an offer around that, as opposed to starting out with numbers. I never start with numbers, ever. And in terms of the multiple, don't know the sector. Could you give us a bit more insight on that, and what kind of business it is, how long it's been going?
Yeah, sure. It's M&E, and they do quite a lot of public sector work.
Yeah, but it seems that back to Guy's question, or Guy's statement. If it's going to take, that's a 4 times multiple plus interest, it might take you 5-6 years to get back to zero. Is this business going to be sustainable for 5-6 years? Number one, and number two, can you grow it? I suppose are the 2 key questions before multiples and numbers are kind of the last thing I look at when we're doing any kind of transaction, whether that be an acquisition of a business or an acquisition of a commercial property. It's always seller's motivation. And I know that doesn't answer your question, but it comes down to, what's his real drivers? Then number 2, can you grow this? Then if you can grow this by, double or triple the business, then 4 times becomes irrelevant, as long as there's sustainable excess cash flow after debt servicing. Yeah.
I just to add to Dan's point, there's 2 things that I wanted to add. First thing is a really powerful question is, why is that important to you? So if they come back with, we think it should be X figure, that's whatever percentage higher than yours, then just test them with that question. Why is that important to you? Because understanding motivation, what's in it for them, why they're doing it is crucial. And the second one is of a more practical nature. You could also introduce a concept of what's called a cash sweep. So a cash sweep is where you're getting alignment with them. So you're saying, well, look, you want this. The moment the numbers don't justify it, but if we can work together, a bit like Siam's strategy, if we can work together to grow the business, and if all things being equal, that extra generation, growth, etc., would achieve Y, then I'm willing to share that with you. And that's called a cash sweep. And that's another way to get to the same end point, but it's about getting alignment so that they understand what you need and you understand what they need. So that's something that you could consider as well.
Thank you. It is actually indicative of, and we have talked to them about what I think we phrased it as an earn-out, whereby they'd share in any future growth.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of the term earn-out. I prefer cash sweep, because it's about saying, look, we're going to generate extra cash if we do this together. And earn-outs have a bit of a bad reputation, that quite often they're used as a mechanism to beat a vendor up, that you never achieve the earn-out figures and they never get paid. So I kind of shy away from using that phrase personally.
Thank you.
Yeah. And there's also other variables, like let's say, because I've been in meetings before where the vendor has been so obsessed with a figure in mind, like I want to sell for £1 million or 5 times exit, but whatever. The answer is always yes. Never say no, because then he just gets their heckles up. So always say yes. But then you have to play with other variables. So you can go, okay, yeah, we can find that price, but we'll have to have a look at the time. So I then draw out a little line, a horizontal line, and I go, right, so magic 1 scenario, you would like, your 5 times exit multiple today in a lump sum. And my magic 1 scenario on the other side of this horizontal line would be, I would like to pay X amount over or whatever. Where is the happy scenario here, which will probably be somewhere halfway. And so let's say it's let's say this person wants to do it over 2 years. So on the left hand side where the magic 1, you write a 2, and then I go, right, well, my magic 1 scenario is that I'd like to pay your inflated figure, or you don't say inflated, your figure over 8 years. So you write 8. And then I go, well, shall we just work inward? So you just write 2, 3, 4, and you just cross off each one, and then you tend to end up around 4 or 5 years. It's just it's a way, but there's lots of different levers you can pull.
If I could just add some perspective of an experience in the M&E industry, I'm speaking actually to an electrical contracting client only last week, and they're experiencing a 20% increase in raw material prices now as a result of Brexit. And they're in fixed term contracts. Their margins were wafer thin anyway. They were having 15% margin on the contracts anyway. They're in trouble. and as a result of that, they're also experiencing, whilst they are wanting to do more jobs in commercial away from residential, they're experiencing across the board a reduction in tenders coming out. And if you've got any experience of the industry, and I might have a different view of this, but it's a ruthless industry, and with the games that they play around retentions and screwing the suppliers down in terms of margin to win the job, and people are working on really, really wafer thin margins. You look at the whole economic cycle, and construction is often hit first. I personally wouldn't, having had 2 years in that industry at a growth cycle, we went through an experience where we got hit by rising raw material prices, admittedly some mistakes on quoting, on tendering, which stung us hard. But I personally wouldn't be looking at that sector at the moment. Others, of course, may disagree, but I just think this. If you've got exposure on, you're contracted for jobs, raw material prices are going to come up, and you could catch a cold.
That's very helpful.
Yeah.
I'm just going to come back quickly on that. I'm with Gavin. It's a really, really tough industry. Construction generally is difficult. The Construction Act, and also the Housing Grants and Regeneration Acts are heavily skewed towards the clients. And unless you're really, really on the ball with your contracts and your administration, you can so easily get spanked. So unless it's something that you know a lot about, Andrew, I personally would give it a wide berth. I've employed lots of electricians, and they're a bunch of Mary Ellens, a nightmare to deal with. So I would give it a body swerve, but that's just based on my experience, really. Guys, I'm gonna have to leave the room, unfortunately, because I've got to jump on a call. But I can tell there's still a head of steam here. So if the other moderators are happy to carry on, then I'll quietly thin out. And I just want to say thank you very much to everybody. We're going to do this again next Friday. Same time, same place. It's been a brilliant room, and we seem to be gathering steam. So clearly people are getting value from it. So thanks very much, and I shall leave you to it. Is that all right, Dan? Siam, Gavin, you okay?
Yeah, I've got to shoot off as well. So
okay, so
I'm going to have to love you and leave you.
As well.
Okay, well,
yes, absolutely. It's over
Dan,
90 minutes.
Yeah, do you need to leave?
I've got another Zoom coming, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, look, we didn't get on to Manish or Gavin, who came up on to ask a question. If you guys want to send me a DM, connect with me on Instagram, send me a DM. By all means, if you've got a question, I'll do my best to answer it. Or indeed, for anybody else on the panel, then do that, and we'll happily do that. Anybody else that didn't get on, had a question, just connect with us and send us your question, and we're really happy to help you all. And we'll see you all next time, next week, same time. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Guy.
Cheers, folks.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Cool, Facebook. Hey, so that's the end of that call. Hopefully it was helpful. Bit of a long radio call, I guess. What was it? An hour, 35 minutes. But I'm going to be holding another Facebook Live at 4 o'clock today on my Facebook page. So, be there. And I'll continue the M&A theme. And I just saw this question by Dan Palmer. He said, I've worked in the construction industry for 13 years and just don't know how these big companies make it work with margins so small. The simple answer to that is it's just scale. With businesses with tiny margins, you just need huge revenue. Like when I was a bullion dealer, my net profit margin was 1.4%. 1.4%. So although if you looked at my vanity metric, I was doing 2 mil turnover a year, that was nothing because my net profit was 1.4%. This is why when you see these big construction companies, they'll have a revenue of tens of millions or billions, and that's how you overcome teeny weeny margins. Righty tighty, gotta love you and leave you. See ya. Bye.